Most of us think about building muscle in terms of what happens in the gym, how many sets, how much weight, how much intensity. But the reality is the act of lifting isn't what makes us stronger. Training is just the signal. The real growth, the actual adaptation, happens later when we recover, and most importantly, while we sleep. And that means if we want to maximize strength, muscle, and longevity, we have to start asking what's happening in the body during those overnight hours that either pushes us forward or holds us back. Now, here's the surprising part. It's not just about sleep quality or duration. Those matter, but there are two specific nutrients, two vitamins, that play a critical role in what your body is able to do with that time. These aren't exotic compounds or performance-enhancing drugs. They're essential micronutrients that most people are either overlooking or not getting enough of. And without them, you could be sabotaging the very process you're working so hard to trigger in the first place. So today we're going to zoom in on those two vitamins. I'll explain how they work at the cellular level, why they're crucial for muscle repair and growth, and most importantly, how to make sure you're getting enough of them so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, you're not just rested, but stronger than you were the day before. When we think about muscle growth, the default picture in our minds is almost always the gym. The clang of weights, the strain of pushing ourselves through another rep, the sweat pouring down as we grind out a workout. That image is powerful because training feels like the moment when growth is happening. After all, our muscles are literally under tension, fibers are tearing at the microscopic level, and we can feel the intensity in real time. But here's the counterintuitive reality. None of that exertion, none of the sets or reps is where the actual growth occurs. What's happening during training is the creation of a signal, a stress that tells the body we need to adapt. The body's response to that signal, however, only takes place after the workout is over. And the most critical window in which that adaptation occurs is while we are asleep. Let's break that down further. Exercise is fundamentally a stressor. When you lift a heavy weight, you're producing microtrauma in your muscle fibers. That damage is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it's necessary. The body interprets that trauma as a message. This muscle was not adequate to meet the demands placed upon it. The body then makes a decision to come back stronger, to remodel those fibers so that next time they can meet the challenge. But here's the catch. The remodeling doesn't happen during the workout itself. When you leave the gym, you're actually weaker than when you walked in. Your muscles are depleted of glycogen, your fibers are disrupted, and your nervous system has been taxed. At that moment, you haven't gained strength, you've accumulated fatigue. The recovery process begins immediately after, but it doesn't operate at its peak until you're asleep. That's when the body shifts into a hormonal and metabolic state optimized for repair. During the first few hours of deep sleep, growth hormone pulses are released, and this surge is one of the most anabolic events the body experiences. Growth hormone promotes protein synthesis, drives muscle repair, and mobilizes fat as a fuel source. Simultaneously, the nervous system transitions into parasympathetic dominance, what we might call the rest and digest mode. This is the opposite of the fight or flight state you're in during intense training. It's in this calm, restorative state that blood flow is directed toward repairing tissues, replenishing glycogen, and restoring balance to the systems that were stressed. Think of your muscles as a construction site. The workout is like detonating a structure so that it can be rebuilt stronger. But if you never bring in the workers, the materials, and the blueprints, nothing happens. Sleep is when the construction crew arrives. Protein synthesis ramps up, amino acids are pulled into cells, and the fibers begin knitting themselves back together in a way that leaves them more resilient than before. Without that window, the damage from training simply accumulates, and instead of getting stronger, you get weaker, fatigued, and more prone to injury. There's also a neurological component to this. Muscle isn't just about tissue, it's about the nervous system's ability to recruit that tissue efficiently. Every rep you perform in the gym is also a neurological skill you're practicing. Sleep is critical for consolidating those motor patterns. In the same way that sleep enhances memory and learning in cognitive tasks, it reinforces the neuromuscular pathways involved in strength training. If you practice squats during the day, sleep is when the brain refines and locks in the firing patterns that make you more efficient at squatting tomorrow. It's the unseen rehearsal that takes place without your awareness, but it's just as important as the physical repair of the muscles themselves. Hormones play a starring role here beyond just growth hormone. Testosterone levels peak during sleep cycles, and this hormone is essential for muscle protein synthesis. Cortisol, the stress hormone, declines during restorative sleep, reducing catabolism, or muscle breakdown, that might otherwise counteract your progress. Even insulin sensitivity is reset during sleep, allowing your muscles to more effectively take in glucose the next day, fueling both performance and recovery. If sleep is cut short or fragmented, each of these hormonal processes is disrupted, and the signal from your workout loses its power. This is why it's so common to see individuals who train hard but plateau. They're putting in the effort in the gym, but they're neglecting the environment that actually allows the body to respond. You could think of training as writing an important memo and recovery as sending it to the recipient. If you never hit send, the message is lost. You can train as hard as you want, but if you're not giving your body the conditions it needs overnight, you're essentially shouting into the void. The depth and quality of sleep matter just as much as the duration. Deep, slow-wave sleep is when most of the anabolic processes occur, and REM sleep has its own role in nervous system recovery and psychological resilience. If your sleep cycles are disrupted, whether by stress, poor sleep hygiene, or inadequate nutrition, the efficiency of muscle repair is compromised. It's not simply about being in bed for 7 or 8 hours. It's about moving through the phases of sleep in a way that supports the biological repair processes. Another layer to consider is inflammation. Training creates an acute inflammatory response, which is part of the signaling that tells muscles to adapt. But that inflammation needs to be resolved in order for recovery to take place. During sleep, anti-inflammatory cytokines are released, and the immune system goes to work repairing tissues at the cellular level. If sleep is cut short, that resolution process is incomplete, and inflammation lingers, interfering with muscle repair and increasing the risk of overtraining. What's fascinating is that even small reductions in sleep duration can have outsized effects. Studies show that sleeping only 5 to 6 hours per night for just a week can reduce testosterone levels, impair growth hormone secretion, and lower protein synthesis rates. Over time, this leads not only to stagnation in strength gains, but also to loss of lean body mass. Conversely, athletes who extend their sleep often see measurable improvements in performance, recovery time, and muscle hypertrophy. The body is exquisitely sensitive to sleep as a signal, and it responds accordingly. All of this underscores a central principle. The gym is where you apply the stimulus, but sleep is where you cash the check. Training sets the stage, but without the follow-through of recovery, the performance never materializes. This is why the most advanced athletes and coaches place just as much emphasis on sleep protocols as they do on training programs. It's not optional and it's not a luxury. It's a requirement if the goal is to build strength and muscle efficiently. Vitamin D and vitamin B12 are often thought of in terms of general health, energy, or immunity, but when we zoom in on the specific processes that govern muscle repair and protein synthesis, their roles become much more precise and far more critical than most people realize. To understand why, we need to think about muscle recovery as a biochemical orchestra. Training initiates the music, sleep provides the stage, but without the right instruments, nutrients that serve as cofactors, regulators, and activators, the symphony cannot play. Two of the most overlooked yet essential instruments in that orchestra are vitamin D and vitamin B12. Their absence, or even suboptimal levels, can quietly sabotage the very process that makes us stronger while we sleep. Let's start with vitamin D. This isn't just a sunshine vitamin tied to mood or bone health. It is a steroid hormone in its active form, and its influence on muscle tissue is profound. Muscle cells contain vitamin D receptors, and when vitamin D binds to those receptors, it triggers a cascade of genetic signals that promote muscle cell growth, differentiation, and repair. Without that binding, the genetic machinery required to build stronger fibers is underactivated. Research has shown that individuals deficient in vitamin D experience muscle weakness, reduced endurance, and slower recovery from exercise. The hormone-like actions of vitamin D don't just protect bones, they are intimately tied to the structural integrity of muscle tissue itself. During sleep, vitamin D's role becomes even more significant. As growth hormone pulses drive protein synthesis, the efficiency of that process depends on whether the genetic environment inside the cell is primed to respond. Vitamin D enhances the transcription of genes involved in muscle protein synthesis, essentially making the machinery more responsive to the anabolic signals being sent. Think of it as adjusting the sensitivity of the volume knob on a stereo. With sufficient vitamin D, the same hormonal signals from sleep translate into a louder, clearer, more effective response. Without it, the signal is faint, and the resulting protein synthesis is muted. Beyond protein synthesis, vitamin D also modulates calcium handling in muscle tissue. Calcium is the trigger for muscle contraction, but it's equally important in recovery as it influences the release of enzymes and cellular repair processes. Proper calcium regulation ensures that muscle fibers not only contract efficiently during training, but also repair efficiently afterward. This becomes particularly relevant during deep sleep when intracellular calcium dynamics play a role in signaling repair pathways. A deficiency in vitamin D can impair calcium regulation, meaning the repair crew inside the muscle fibers doesn't get its full set of tools to do the job. Vitamin D also exerts anti-inflammatory effects. Exercise-induced muscle damage triggers inflammation as a necessary step in recovery. However, that inflammation must be balanced. Too much and repair slows. Too little and the adaptive signal is lost. Vitamin D helps regulate the immune response by modulating cytokine production, ensuring that inflammation resolves at the right pace. During sleep, this fine-tuned orchestration is essential for the transition from muscle breakdown to muscle rebuilding. Without adequate vitamin D, inflammation can linger, extending soreness, delaying recovery, and reducing the net gains from training. Now let's turn to vitamin B12, which operates in a different but equally indispensable domain. B12 is central to energy metabolism, nerve function, and DNA synthesis, all of which intersect directly with the demands of muscle repair. At the cellular level, B12 serves as a cofactor in the production of red blood cells and the synthesis of hemoglobin. This directly impacts the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Oxygen is not only vital during training, but also during sleep, when tissues are undergoing repair and require a steady supply of oxygen to fuel the metabolic processes involved in rebuilding. Insufficient B12 can reduce oxygen delivery, starving the muscles of the energy they need for repair and stalling recovery. One of B12's most critical roles is in the metabolism of homocysteine. Elevated homocysteine levels are associated with muscle weakness, impaired circulation, and even microvascular damage. B12, in partnership with folate, converts homocysteine into methionine, which is a building block for protein synthesis. Methionine is also required for methylation reactions that regulate DNA and gene expression. During muscle repair, DNA synthesis is necessary for creating new nuclei in muscle fibers, a process that enables hypertrophy. Without sufficient B12, this cycle is disrupted, leading to impaired protein synthesis and blunted muscle growth, even if the hormonal environment from sleep is optimal. B12 is also deeply involved in nervous system recovery, a factor that's often underestimated when discussing muscle repair. Every contraction during training relies on neuromuscular communication, and sleep is the window when those neural pathways are reinforced. B12 supports the synthesis of myelin, the protective sheath around nerves that enhances conduction speed and efficiency. If B12 levels are low, nerve repair and remyelination suffer, meaning the nervous system cannot optimize its ability to recruit muscle fibers effectively. This is not just a matter of energy or endurance, but of raw strength. The nervous system's ability to fire more efficiently translates directly into greater force production, and this adaptation is consolidated during sleep in the presence of adequate B12. The interplay between vitamin D and B12 is worth emphasizing. Vitamin D primes the muscle fibers themselves, making them more responsive to anabolic signals, while B12 ensures the supporting systems. Oxygen delivery, DNA synthesis, neural conduction are functioning at their peak. Together, they form a synergistic foundation. One addresses the structural and hormonal responsiveness of the muscle tissue, while the other ensures the metabolic and neurological environment is capable of sustaining that growth. It's a dual strategy: fortify the target tissue and optimize the systems that supply and control it. During sleep, this partnership becomes most evident. As protein synthesis accelerates, the demand for amino acids, oxygen, and genetic regulation rises sharply. Vitamin D enhances the sensitivity of the muscle fibers to those signals, while B12 ensures that the red blood cells can deliver oxygen, that methionine is available for protein assembly, and that neural recovery is proceeding smoothly. If either nutrient is deficient, the overnight repair process is compromised. Instead of waking up stronger, you wake up merely rested, or worse, still inflamed, still fatigued, and no closer to your strength goals. Many people assume they're covered because they eat a varied diet or get some sun exposure, but subclinical deficiencies are more common than we think. Modern indoor lifestyles, sunscreen use, and geographical factors leave a large percentage of the population with inadequate vitamin D levels. Similarly, B12 absorption declines with age, and dietary restrictions such as veganism can leave individuals with insufficient intake. Even among athletes, where nutrition is often carefully considered, these gaps are surprisingly prevalent, and when the body is under the additional stress of training, the need for these nutrients becomes even more pronounced. The science here is not just theoretical, it is borne out in measurable outcomes. Supplementation with vitamin D has been shown to improve muscle strength, reduce risk of injury, and accelerate recovery. B12 supplementation in deficient individuals leads to improved energy levels, enhanced recovery, and better neuromuscular function. These are not marginal gains, but foundational ones. Without these vitamins, the entire process of building muscle while you sleep is operating at partial capacity. Optimizing nutrients is not about adding random supplements on top of your training. It's about aligning biology so that your body can do what it is already designed to do, only better. When you think about waking up stronger, the picture is not of some dramatic overnight transformation, but of countless incremental adaptations that add up over weeks and months. Each night, your muscles are either building or stalling, and the difference between those two outcomes often comes down to whether the internal environment has the resources it needs. Vitamin D and vitamin B12 are examples of resources that quietly dictate how effective that process will be. When they are present in adequate amounts, the recovery machinery works seamlessly. When they are lacking, even in subtle ways, the gears grind slower, the process drags, and the opportunity to translate yesterday's effort into tomorrow's strength is diminished. Think about what actually happens in the hours after you fall asleep. The brain enters deep, slow wave cycles. Growth hormone is released in pulses, testosterone is optimized, cortisol is lowered, and protein synthesis begins repairing the micro tears in your muscle fibers. That repair process is not automatic in the sense that it always succeeds. at full capacity. It is dependent on substrates, cofactors, and enzymatic activity. Protein synthesis cannot occur efficiently without the right vitamins and minerals acting as silent enablers. Oxygen transport cannot fuel repair without red blood cell function at its peak. Neurological consolidation cannot fully embed motor learning without the nutrients required to sustain myelin and neurotransmitter synthesis. These aren't optional extras. They're prerequisites. Vitamin D enhances the sensitivity of muscle tissue to anabolic signals, and vitamin B12 ensures that oxygen delivery, DNA replication, and neuromuscular recovery are all functioning at full strength. Put them together, and what you see is not just sleep acting as recovery time, but sleep acting as active growth time. Instead of passively resting, your body is running a complex, nutrient-driven program that rebuilds what you broke down in the gym. With the right levels of these vitamins, the program runs cleanly. With deficiencies, it's like trying to run a software update with missing files. It either crashes or operates in a reduced state. You still wake up, but you don't wake up stronger. It's important to understand that adequate levels of these vitamins aren't static. Training increases the body's demand for recovery resources. Athletes, people who train regularly, or even those undergoing stressful schedules with less sleep have elevated requirements compared to someone who is sedentary. That's why population averages for vitamin sufficiency can be misleading. You could be within the normal range on a blood test, yet still be operating below optimal for muscle recovery. Optimal is not the same as average, and when the goal is to maximize adaptation, aiming for the bare minimum isn't enough. During sleep, small differences in nutrient availability compound. A single night of impaired recovery may feel like a minor inconvenience, but over the course of a week or a month, those nights accumulate. That's why you see two people with similar training routines diverge so dramatically in outcomes. One is consistently waking up with muscles that have been repaired, fibers rebuilt, energy systems replenished. The other is waking up with incomplete recovery, small amounts of unresolved inflammation, and lower sensitivity to the anabolic signals from hormones. Over time, those differences widen into visible gaps in strength, muscle mass, and resilience. The difference is not always in the training, it's often in what the body was able to do with the training during sleep. My nervous system's role adds another dimension. Vitamin B12's involvement in myelin synthesis directly affects how well your nervous system communicates with your muscles. During sleep, synaptic pruning and reinforcement happen, and motor patterns you practiced during the day are consolidated. When B12 is sufficient, that consolidation is sharper and your nervous system can fire more efficiently, recruiting more fibers with greater precision. This means that not only are you repairing muscle tissue overnight, but you're also literally teaching your body to be stronger in the way it coordinates movement. Waking up stronger is not just about bigger fibers. It's about a more finely tuned system for activating those fibers. Vitamin D complements this by setting the stage inside the muscle cells themselves. With adequate vitamin D, the muscle tissue is more receptive to the anabolic hormones released during sleep. The receptors are primed, the transcription pathways are active, and the signals for protein synthesis are amplified. Without that readiness, the same hormonal pulses land on less responsive tissue, and the outcome is weaker. This difference is invisible in the short term. You don't feel it after one night, but it becomes very visible after weeks of training when one person is making gains and another is stuck on a plateau. Consider the immune system's involvement in recovery. Every training session creates micro-injury that has to be cleaned up by immune cells before rebuilding begins. Vitamin D regulates that immune response, making sure inflammation resolves and transitions into repair. Without sufficient vitamin D, inflammation lingers, leading to extended soreness and delayed adaptation. During sleep, this regulation is particularly critical as immune activity peaks in those hours. If vitamin D levels are optimal, immune cells are efficient at clearing damage and signaling repair. If not, the process is sluggish and you wake up with muscles still in the breakdown phase rather than already moving toward growth. Energy metabolism adds yet another layer. Vitamin B12 is indispensable for the production of ATP, the cellular energy currency. Muscle repair is not just about raw materials like amino acids, it is also about having the energy to power the repair process. During deep sleep, mitochondria are working to restore energy stores, and B12 acts as a cofactor in the reactions that generate ATP. If levels are low, mitochondrial efficiency is compromised and recovery slows. This is why fatigue is one of the first signs of B12 deficiency. It's not just systemic tiredness, but a cellular inability to generate enough energy to repair and adapt. What emerges from this picture is that waking up stronger is not just the product of one variable like sleep duration or one habit like consistent training. It's the integration of multiple systems working in harmony: hormonal, pulses, protein synthesis, immune regulation, neural consolidation, and energy metabolism. Vitamin D and vitamin B12 are two critical switches that allow these systems to function at their potential. Without them, the machinery is still there, but it is running at half power, and the result is slower, weaker, less efficient adaptation. With them, each night of sleep becomes a strategic opportunity for progress. The subtlety is that people rarely notice deficiencies immediately. They may feel a little more fatigued, take longer to recover, or struggle to make progress, but they often attribute this to training intensity, age, or stress. Only when the gap in recovery becomes significant do they realize that the problem lies not in what they are doing in the gym, but in what they are not supporting outside of it. The real difference in outcomes is often hidden in these invisible variables, the nutrients that allow the processes of sleep to fully translate into growth.